with another movie review, and this time we're going to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines. Yes, this is the sixth and latest installment in the franchise. This is directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, and this stars, of course, Brec Bassinger as the young Iris Campbell, Richard Harmon as Eric Campbell, Kaitlyn, Santa, Juana, which is basically, she's the main antagonist, is Stephanie Lewis, her brother Charlie, and Owen Joyner, Bobby Campbell, and then of course her aunt Brenda, her mom Darlene, her uncle Howard, and also in the movie more or less this is the ode to Tony Todd as William J. Bloodworth, as he is pretty much the surgeon in mostly of these movies and installments. So here I'm gonna kind of just go a little bit briefly, just talk about the pros, the cons, and my overall review. So before we get into that, I'll talk about the plot real quick. So the plot simply is simple. Played by violent and recurring nightmare, a college student heads home to track down, and played by Kaitlyn. Juana, she is the college student who heads back home to track down the one person who might be able to break the cycle of death and save her family from the grisly demise that inevitably awaits them all. So in this movie, we pretty much pick up a lot from where other previous installments have, with this outlook and this overall outtake on death, and how death pretty much is plaguing a lot of the family throughout. And we kind of just see throughout the runtime of the film, Stephanie, she is put on academic probation because of her grades and because of these reoccurring nightmares that she ends up imagining her grandmother. And her grandmother pretty much had gone through a premonition and a feeling and awaiting and awakening of death alongside that affects the surroundings and affects the people around her. Her grandmother ended up having this premonition throughout, and we end up seeing how that could play an effect on Iris and on her family. So yeah, I really do believe that as I'm going into this movie watching it, and I'm glad I watched all of the installments. I'm glad I watched all the installments of the franchise, so that way I could get accumulated and get accustomed going into Bloodlines. Because if you don't watch any of the movies and don't watch any of the storyline, any of those movies, and you wouldn't know any of the storylines, you wouldn't know anything that has to do with plague and death, and how anything that has to do with the plague and the death, and anything that has to do with, just how death affects, families and affects everybody around them. So that was really the thing that really currently just gave me room to go see this film. And so when I saw it, I was just so applauded, just so at awe on just the way, on how the kills, the gore, and everything, and how that was pretty much played, and how that was throughout. And we saw that, and I saw that in the movie where Iris, a young version of Iris, she was seeing in her premonition, in a situation where she ended up saving over 100 lives, 100 people's lives at this restaurant called the Skyview, and where she ends up saving these people at this on the Skyview, this 10-story restaurant. People, she stopped performers from performing. She kind of just told people to just get out of the restaurant, because death and bad things was finna happen. Whether it be glass shattering, whether it be just stuff falling from the sky, damages to equipment. She was just trying to warn people and get people to evacuate. If Iris is trying to get people to evacuate and avoid devastating things from happening. But when she ended up saving those lives, a lot of the death had to end up coming around a year and a half or so later, and killed all those 100 people that was at that Sky Viewpoint restaurant one by one. And so Stephanie ends up having this reoccurring nightmare, and so it ends up affecting her throughout, throughout the movie and throughout the story. So that's why she heads back home to find out her family and see her family, seeing her father, seeing her brother Charlie, and then she ends up taking a long trip to go see her uncle and to go end up her uncle Howard, and she ends up going to take a long trip down there country road to go end up going to see her aunt as well. And also Charlie goes with her because he wants to hang out with his cousins, and they end up going to see his cousins and rekindle with them. And so Stephanie ends up talking with Uncle Howard and her aunt, and wants to know what happened with Iris, and wants to know what happened at that time, and why she ends up having these reoccurring nightmares of this of her grandmother, and of her being stuck in that 10-star restaurant, at that Skyview restaurant. And so they end up telling her about her grandmother Iris, that she was, had so many stories and had so many fairy tales. She was deliberately delivering them just false equivalencies, false things, of false storylines about death, and how death could really play this toll that really could kill this whole family, the family tree, like one by one. And so that's why they end up locking Iris end up locking her family, like in her cabin for a while. But they eventually end up leaving and moving out and moving away from Iris, and they end up getting away from her and lost contact with her. And so she ended up staying in this cabin forever, right? And not afraid to go outside, to try to protect her safety. But in that sense, none of the people in the family believed anything that Iris was saying about death, and how that could be affecting to be run a toll on them, because that they basically believed that Iris was just telling them about a bunch of conspiracy theories. And so in that sense, they just thought that Iris was just telling them things that was just abundantly clear of out of the random blue. And so once I get more into the movie, Stephanie ends up reading old letters, and ends up taking the storybook from Iris that leads into the night of that vision of the nightmare that happened at that Skyview restaurant, and looks at all the old photos, looks at all the old pictures of all the people that was there at that time, and also Stephanie ends up connecting it back to her family, and relays them the plot line, driven that death was going to happen no matter what the cause, no matter what the case, and it could affect not only her family, not only could affect the family, but it could individually be killed randomly, one by one, and how they end up going into a faction. And so Stephanie wants to know more answers. So she ends up going to the Old River Hospital, and she ends up talking and finally gets to William J. Bloodworth, played by Tony Todd. And it was a nice what they did with Tony Todd's character. So he talks to Stephanie and Darlene, her mother, and the rest of the family that was there after we saw a couple of kill scenes before that time. But he ends up unveiling to them on how, in a certain character, which I'm not going to spoil, was how she ends up surviving these melee of death-defying obstacles and events. How she ends up surviving. He ends up relaying a story and a message to Stephanie about it, and so they took it with a grain. And he ends up mentioning about Iris, and how Iris pretty much saved him from evidently being that ultimate collapse of the Skyview restaurant, and he ends up escaping because his mother had took him there that night, and which he wasn't supposed to be there. And so that's what pretty much unlaid and unveiled him to tell this story and how to end up surviving, which pretty much he says, there's no way of surviving, there's no way of cheating death. Death is pretty much a way of just doing just strange and cooked up things, so that could So pretty much no matter what is going to be the case, evidently everyone in Stephanie's family is going to pretty much die at the end of the day. You know, either survive the killing or pretty much killing one individual in the family. So that pretty much was throughout the movie and throughout what I saw. So the biggest positives that I want to say for the movie, the biggest pros I would say, is I really do love the kills. I really do love the gore, and I really do love the overall like effects. I really do love the overall effects. I really do love the overall kills and the gore. It really was good kills. It really was good scenes on how they showed the kills and how it was so effective and how it kind of just gave the audience a cause to pause and gave the audience like a unpleasant and uncomfortable reaction. And also, I really do like the supporting cast of Stephanie's family, mainly her mother Darlene, because I really feel like she was trying to be the overprotective mother of Stephanie, and I really do feel as if her Uncle Howard was trying to give her warning signs, you know, not to just play around with kooky conspiracy theories that, you know, his mother was putting her in her head, and that was pretty much what it was based upon. So that's pretty much what I kind of picked up. And another thing what I picked up in the movie was a big pro was I really do enjoy I really did enjoy the overall I really did enjoy the overall the storyline. I thought the storyline really just, and how they explained the bloodlines, the bloodline central theme, and just the overall message throughout it. I really thought that was a really good message that gave everybody a way of just attracting. The biggest negatives, the biggest con I would say is I do think the CGI, you know, was not fully all the way mastered. I felt like there were certain scenes that just felt a bit rushed and felt a bit too uneasy and unsettling to watch, and I didn't really like that part about the movie. And that would be the main thing I would say is the CGI. I don't really like the main lead. I think that she was just not really an overall a good character. I really just thought that she made certain things all about herself and kind of had a bit of a selfish mentality in some instances. So that would be the main thing I would say that was a big drawback from it. So overall, I would give the movie, overall on an entertainment scale, I give it overall an 8 out of 10. I really did enjoy this movie. I really did enjoy the Final Destination Bloodlines. I really do think that it's probably one of the better sequels since the second movie, and I really do think that you guys should check it out. So that is my overall thoughts about Final Destination Bloodlines, and tell me what you guys think down in the comment section, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.